So, I've been unsure of whether or not I should really comment on everything that's just happened, but I've spent my entire life since I've been aware of world events, which for me, I kind of reached the age where you start thinking about those kinds of things, well, just before September 11th, which was I don't know, experience of sorts. But I've been seeing these kinds of things happen my whole life, and I've tried my best to frame things in a historical context as well as a context of recent events, and things are always going to be more heavily influenced by more recently events than events further in the past, but also, things are more heavily influenced by more localized events and, more heavily influenced by just events of greater significance, et cetera, et cetera. The world's a very complex place. I don't purport to, you know, have some special insight, but, you know, I hate that I have to even specify, but of course I'm talking about the fact that we just attacked Iran, along with Israel, or Israel and the United States just attacked Iran, I should say. And, well, that's bad. That's bad for a multitude of reasons, not the least of which is that thing that they always say is technically true. Yes, Iran is always, in some sense, fairly close to a nuclear weapon, and that they deliberately hold their program a few months away from completion, not because they're incapable of completing it, but because they know as soon as they do, there will no longer be a reason for people to sort of try to negotiate with them over whether or not they will complete the program, because they don't actually want a nuclear weapon, they want an elaborate negotiating tactic, and they want the option for a nuclear weapon in the event that that fails. Now, I'm not saying that the regime there are good guys, just that they are at least somewhat rational. Also, another thing people don't seem to understand, even people that oppose the attack that we just initiated, myself included, I oppose that attack, to be clear. It was senseless and accomplishes nothing other than unleashing violence onto the world for really no good fucking reason. Let's be real. So, well, now what? Well, now, the reason that they had for holding that program is gone. So basically, we now have 3 months to either induce a regime change, glass the country, or they're going to have a nuke. Kinda end a fucking menu on that front, unfortunately. Now, I don't think that even as bad as things are, that there's enough of an appetite for genocide to just completely bomb Iran to smithereens, so I doubt that's going to happen. Even as horrible as the current administration is, he's too narcissistic to do something that would turn even his own, absolute, narcissistic as he is, delusional fan base against him over that. So that's not happening. And a regime change with boots on the ground without just glassing the country is something that really isn't possible in 3 months, and that I seriously doubt we're going to try. However, I would not be that surprised if that does happen. I'm going to say that, again, these are totally meaningless numbers, but I'm going to put about a 20% probability on that happening, and about an 80% probability on what I'm about to describe happening, which is that we will continue to bomb Iran in an attempt to prevent them from completing that program. However, I assure you, they may not be good guys in the Iranian regime, although there's lots of good people in Iran, of course, just like there are in America. But I really should say, America and Iran, and refer to them as polities, and rather than saying us and them, because there's just, people, and, most people are good people, and good people don't want to slaughter each other, but, good people usually don't get into positions of power in any country, so, so it goes. Occasionally they do, especially in a democracy, but even in a democracy, we got to spend about, approximately 50% of our time having horrible leadership. It's just kind of, how it goes. It's preferable to having, 100% of the time, that's for sure. So anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah. So, they've thought of this, I assure you. They're not idiots. They have very competent scientists, some of whom work for the regime out of some misguided sense of loyalty, I'm sure, and some of whom are evil, I'm sure, and some of whom just feel intimidated and are afraid of what will happen to their families if they refuse, I'm sure. I have no idea in what ratio, I'm not God. I cannot really figure that sort of thing out. However, I can infer strategically and, from the laws of physics, because I read about the former and I've spent my life studying the latter, that, it's not that hard to stash a bunch of fissionable material in a bunch of caves around the country, take a bunch of pre-completed designs, because I assure you they've already completed the design process. The only thing that's left is assembly, testing, and then setting up for large-scale production, which, needless to say, would be very bad, and yet I assure you that is exactly what they have begun the process on in parallel right now, with also beginning the process of getting ready to conduct their first live test, because any reason they might have had to not do that just went out the fucking window. Which is why what we just, again, I shouldn't say we, what the United States under the Trump administration has just done is remove any reason that the Iranian regime might have had not to pull the trigger on that at long last. And so here we go. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of nuclear weapons design, but I'll just say it's a country with millions of people in it, and for all the horrors of the regime, they were smart enough to leave the education system mostly intact, at least for technical fields. Obviously, they, if you're a philosophy professor or something, they watch you like a hawk, but if you're a physics professor, you can get a little bit of leeway there, so, I don't know. Which is why it's, I feel certain, I don't know. I can't hate those people because I'm a physics professor, right? And that's kind of how that's always meant to start in a way. Is they're like, wait, I'm blank, so I can't really hate them. And then you start extending that to more and more people, right? And, and then you, of course, realize that everybody's an individual. And then the really hard part is, that's the thing you're all supposed to learn in, like, kindergarten, right? Our society is just so toxic these days because of, well, MAGA, amongst other things. But, no, anyways. Oh man, this is not good. This is everything I've ever been afraid of, and I might get what I thought I wanted, or I might get to fly fighter jets. I might not. Honestly, I have no idea if that'll happen. It seems like the probability of that happening goes up every day. It's like I would much rather just do it in a video game and get RC airplanes and then occasionally fly just full scale Cessnas and Pipers and stuff just for fun. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have fantasies of flying fighter jets and, going through the sky at high speeds and high G and launching missiles, but I have never once had a fantasy of taking a human life. That does not appeal to me in any capacity. I hope, if this does happen, I hope everybody ever shoot down ejects. But I'm not some saintly person, I'm... if there's some adrenaline pumping war going on, I know I'm going to end up in it. And it's not because I want to go bomb Iran and fight for the bad guys when we're the bad guys. Because to be clear, right now, there are no good guys, right? The United States is led by an evil administration. Iran is led by an evil regime. And wars are pretty much always started by one evil entity attacking another evil entity. They're seldom by an evil entity attacking some innocent entity. Because again, polities are not people, right? But nonetheless, if we're sort of going to make that metaphor, it's not that nobody ever... I mean, Ukraine was pretty much innocent in the, when it got invaded by Russia. That was for all, again, countries are not people, but, again, that was an unprovoked attack, right? And so, people that are innocent get attacked all the time. But, again, countries are not people. Geopolitics is not office politics, although obviously one kind of evolves from the other. But I don't know. Or the sentiments, you know what I mean. But anyways. Oh, man, this is not good. This is not good. I mean, I'm not exactly the first person to point that out, but, well, so it goes. I don't know. You gotta understand, this is not gonna end quickly. People have been comparing the United States right now to Germany in the 1930s, and again, this expression also gets overused, but I still like this expression where they say history doesn't repeat itself, but it sometimes rhymes, right? Where there's a lot of patterns that tend to repeat, but of course things never truly repeat because, time marches on and we never truly go back to the same situation. Right now I'm pacing back and forth in the backyard here. And I'm walking back and forth between the same 2 points, but, it's not like I repeat the same sentence every time I do. Time marches on. And so the situation we're in right now is much more analogous to the situation before the First World War, where we have these long series of sort of, flare-up conflicts before and other things going on, but a relatively extended period of no major conflicts beforehand. And then, the big one kind of finally starts. And when it does, everybody kind of knew something was coming, but nobody really anticipates just how horrible it's about to be. But some people do. And I don't want to be all like, I'm one of those people, because it's like, I told you so is probably one of the most unsatisfying feelings in all of existence. I mean, there are times that it's what you need, right? Just like, I don't know, it's my friend's mom once said as a kid that there are times that like she really craved these like Jack in the Box like those really abysmal quality, like fast food tacos. That it was only like once in a blue moon because there was just like, some nutrient in there or something, right? There was some extremely niche thing or whatever, or maybe it was just something about, who knows, but it's something that very rarely makes sense to do, but on very rare occasions it does. So I don't know. I don't even remember what I was saying now. Good Lord, this is going to be awful. So anyways, oh yes. What I was saying. So yeah, at the end of the 19th century, there had been an extended period of what people thought of as peace, and so the microdose of thing I really shouldn't do is a sort of is I told you so in advance here, where I'm like, I'm not really gonna want to say I told you so once things get really bad. And let's be real, the only reason I'm even like doing this is basically because I just want to have like some sense to myself that like, I said something, knowing that it wouldn't stop anything, but just so I could say like, look, man, I tried. And I feel like under those circumstances, it's acceptable, because this isn't I told you so per se. It's just something that could very easily become I told you so, because this is the I'm telling you that I think this is going to happen. And then I don't think in the future I will reference this video and say I told you so over and over. I think it will just be in my memory of like, well, at least I tried, which is that what is likely to happen is, again, we live in a democracy and the midterms are coming up. So honestly, Donald Trump's probably going to get impeached, not as soon as 2027 starts, but honestly, before 2028 does. I suspect he will be removed from office, either by the Grim Reaper or by Congress, whichever comes fucking first. So I think we're probably going to be good on that front. So although he is a truly horrible, evil human being, he is not really going to be a concern much longer. But it's like, just like, anything else, right? It's like, it's the underlying phenomena that is the problem, right? It's, not that Donald Trump is not a person who has made horrible decisions that have made the world meaningfully worse. It's that really large-scale events like this, they can't just be sort of constructed to the whims of, one man like that. They build up over the course of decades and even centuries, really. But it'll be too late on the Iran front, right? Whatever's going to happen in Iran, it's not going to be over, but it'll be fully developed, whatever it is, and there'll be no backing down. But that's not the real problem, right? That would be horrible. But in and of itself, that would just be, horrible. What is going to make this truly horrible on a scale that people, I think, don't, because that's horrible, but that's horrible on a scale that I think people kind of anticipate and know is going to be bad. What people really don't anticipate is the thing that's most strongly analogous to the situation before the First World War, which is that Europeans had become accustomed to fighting these colonial wars that are analogous to the quote-unquote war on terror that the Bush administration conducted, which was really a war of terror by the Bush administration. I should like to think that that's not by America, but I have to be honest and say it was, because although I never voted for the man, I was too young and I never would have voted for the man. He's horrible. We did that. This country did that. I only have to say we if I associate myself with this country, but for the time being, I do. As long as there are countries, and as long as this is the one I live in, it's, actually not a terrible one, because at least it's a democracy and we can get away from stuff like that when we start going down a dark path. But sometimes we are going to go down one. It's just how it goes. It's, I guess, in a way, democracy is like, the analogy is democracy in a way is analogous to what having free will as a human being is like in the first place. And don't take that analogy too far, but it makes a very loose analogy. Well, what's likely to happen, though, is that the Iran situation will play out over the next year or so, and it won't be resolved, but it'll be fully developed and sort of evened out as sort of a not an equilibrium, but a sort of steady state that lasts for quite a while, where there's sort of, entrenched front lines that won't be literal frontline trenches per se, because we're going to use boots on the ground pretty sparingly, and mostly just to shore up security for our air bases and in Iraq. But, we're going to continue to funnel money and resources into militias and other things in Iraq and the surrounding regions to encourage other people to go and harass Iran's land borders just to make sure that they don't break out with their own land military, which is unlikely anyways, but just to make doubly sure, we'll do that. And then, of course, we're going to conduct a very lengthy air campaign, which I have no intention of participating in. I couldn't if I tried, and it will be, sort of not as atrocity sort of driven as the war, quote unquote, in Gaza, which is just, as they say, a genocide. And they say that because that's accurate, unfortunately. Free Palestine. But, it's like, how are we even going to start doing that in a situation like this? I don't know. And so then, here we go, I guess. Our Iran situation will be fully developed. Donnie will be removed from office. However, by then, China will have already decided to just go for it on Taiwan. Okay, that is now a foregone conclusion. Now that we have attacked Iran like this, there is no longer any reason for them to hold back on building a nuke, for China to hold back on invading Taiwan, and Taiwanese leadership aren't stupid either, and they are pretty much in the same situation on the nuclear weapons front. And this is kind of the point I've been trying to get to that really scares me, and that I've been trying to explain for a long time, and that it's finally just kind of too late on, and I kind of wish I had said something because I told you so is unsatisfying, but it's like, well, saying something probably wouldn't have changed it, and it would have just made it more tempting to say I told you so, I guess. So, well, nuclear weapons proliferation is something that hasn't been happening, and I don't think people understand how much of our sort of geopolicy for the last 75, 80 years has been organized around preventing nuclear weapons proliferation, and how now the proverbial cork has been removed from that bottle. Pandora's box is truly open, and anybody with a large enough economy to start centrifuging uranium is going to start doing so and building them, because it's at this point not that difficult. It's not good. So that's going to start happening, and then most likely China is going to try to invade Taiwan. They're going to be partially, but only slightly successful and immediately be pushed back, and then do it again and be pushed back over and over. I doubt they'll ever take the island. They'll probably get a beachhead a few times, which will be destroyed with, you guessed it, a nuclear weapon, just like people have been speculating. Again, most of this is not news. These are things that I have just sort of read or heard elsewhere and been like, yes, that makes sense. And then I've evaluated them with other evidence that I have and been like, yes, that is most likely correct. However, physics-wise, I can tell you certain things, although I'm not going to get into the details of, it's, again, I don't know any classified information, but I just understand how these weapons work quite well. It's not going to be hard. It's not like that easy, but any country with like a mid-sized economy is going to have them in short order. And that's the real reason that Germany has given up their nuclear power. It's not because of the nuclear waste. It's because it gets rid of the temptation to build nuclear weapons. And people just kind of know that, if you have reactors, you can build weapons. Because the standard type of fission reactor makes plutonium in the course of normal operation. And some of that plutonium is consumed in situ as the reactor operates, but most of it is not. And that's actually a lot of what's in high-level waste is plutonium. But there's a reason people keep high-level waste, and it's not because we don't know how to dispose of it. It's because it can be used to extract that plutonium so that you can use it to build a weapon. Again, this is not news. It's just that people don't realize just how prolific a practice this is. Japan is the only country that kind of like winkingly acknowledges it, but there's lots of countries that do it, and it's going to only become more common over the course of the next few years, which is incredibly dangerous because the situation is analogous to Europe before World War I, except on the scale of truly the entire world, which is why it's ironic that was called World War I, even though that was basically just Europe at war while they had colonies around the world, and then World War II actually kind of was the whole world at war, but really it was just Europe and Asia at war simultaneously because of globalization beginning, and then now we finally actually probably will have what you could call truly a world war, which is not going to be pretty. It's going to be truly awful. I am not afraid of it per se, but that's only because I'm intellectualizing it so much that I don't really know how to feel about it. So, I don't know, man. I guess, got to, try to love Jesus and live as much as I can without hate in my heart, but I am probably going to have to push buttons that I know will result in people's deaths before this is over, which, yeah, let's not mince words, is killing people. But I will admit does feel like there's a difference between pulling a trigger versus, watching the life drain from someone's eyes as you beat them to death or something. It's mostly just how many chances you get to change your mind. But there is something about that. If you pull the trigger, part of you probably just instantly regrets it. That's why, it should be clear, most of the bullets that are fired in combat are not intended to hit anybody. They're what's called suppressing fire. So, it's just sort of firing a lot of, rounds of ammunition through the air towards the area that the enemy is so that they have to keep their head down so they can't shoot at you. But you always know that it might hit somebody when you do that, right? And so most sort of, infantry, which, don't get me wrong, you cannot go to war without infantry. A war without infantry is not a war. It's just kind of an elaborate sort of, duel with machinery, which is something I would massively prefer to having an actual war. And it's something that we keep trying to do instead of a war, but you really can't do that, right? Now, we're going to be in a war that involves a lot more sort of machine-on-machine combat than most wars in the past have, but nonetheless, the heart of every conflict is, two men meeting each other on the battlefield, not having any hate for each other, but being on opposite sides and having to kill each other. That is the heart of what a war is and why it is hell. And that is going to happen. It's just going to happen with, 3 fighter jets every head for every infantryman instead of, a 3,000 to 1 ratio in the other direction. Good. I think that is at least a small mercy to this, but it's nonetheless going to be a nightmare because might be fewer guys, but there's still going to be guys down there. Most of them are going to be Taiwanese or Chinese. So it goes. Not looking forward to this. Also, a lot of, then I forgot to mention, a lot of them are also going to be Indian. The good news is that'll mostly be in the air. Again, see previous point, small mercy. At least most of this will be machine-on-machine duels with assholes like me that just kind of want to get at each other. So we can try to protect our guys on the ground stuck in this fucking nightmare. So it goes. I tell myself that's my motivation. If that's the truth, I like to think I could get blown to pieces and still be at peace when I die. I don't want to find out, but I suspect I will.